if this is truly something that happens, she says, this is a type of evil. Either it's a metaphysical evil, right? In that it's a flaw in the system, meaning that God made laws that could be broken, right? So there's potentially a metaphysical issue in terms of God's power to create this goodness and this regularity of law in the universe, right? This order, this predictability that is so useful, right? That it's sort of weird that as an afterthought, right, that God could just decide to break those rules. So it could potentially be a metaphysical evil. She also thinks, though, and I think this one's a little more interesting, that it's a cognitive evil, right? That again, if there is a God, this God made us with the capacity to reason and such intelligence that we are trying to understand the laws of nature, right? We're trying to understand how our universe operates. And so if that's the case, why would that God then break those laws? Like, wouldn't that just confuse us? It's almost like sadistic. Like these people are trying to figure, it'd be like if, okay, so as part of, your final grade for this class, you have to figure out my grading system, and I never tell you what it is, right? And then halfway through the quarter, you guys think you figured it out, and then I just break my own rule, right? And I do something else. That's going to throw everybody off, right? It's going to add a thing that is going to derail you from answering those questions. So it could also be just an epistemic or cognitive evil. But then it also could just be, she thinks, a simple moral evil, that maybe this is some sort of not sadistic, but at least capricious act on the part of God, right? That God made these laws, but it doesn't matter. God can break them whenever God wants, right? Again, there might be some sort of potential flaw in God's moral compass if we see violations of laws of nature in this way, right? So those are some potential views, but what if those are not compelling, right? If you don't think that miracles are any sort of evil, then she has some other potential views. She says, well, it could just be that miracles are incompatible with a perfect God. Because remember, back to the ontological argument, the simplest way of understanding what most people understand to be God is a most perfect being, right? And again, it seems odd that a perfectly good, perfectly informed, and perfectly talented God, right, would then just undo whatever decision they had made before. Because if they had to undo it, then maybe it wasn't perfect in the first place, right? So again, there's a potential threat here to God's perfection that it might be incompatible with. The third one is that it tends to make God an outsider, right? Outside of the laws of nature, which again, if you're a deist or something like that, that might not be problematic. But for her, for traditional Christian monotheists, right, who want a personal God, right? The idea is that for God to intervene in this way, right, God needs to be outside of the laws that they are violating, right? Otherwise, they're like changing themselves while they're in the system. Or finally, you could just think that it's not fair, right? If God performs miracles, well, there seems to be a clear case of inequity in terms of who gets the miracles and who doesn't get the miracles, right? So here again, we might have some sort of mark against God's moral character here, right? If not that it is an act of moral evil, that it's at least not fair, right? Who gets miracles bestowed upon them and who doesn't, right? Again, this is leading us into our conversation next week, the problem of evil, right? Why do good things happen to bad people, right? Why do bad things happen to good people, right? Who decides who gets the miracles? And again, that can lead to some really, effed up views in certain religious traditions.